Friends, welcome back to the Film Alchemist podcast, the show where we take the movies we love, break them apart, to find out what gives them their magic. Halloween magic, October magic, the darkest kind of magic. Yes. Welcome back to the 31 Days, 31 Pods October Mega Marathon here at the Film Alchemist podcast. We're about a third of the way through. We're on our second franchise. We're here today to discuss Phantasm 2, and you know what that means. We're joined again by our friend and returning co-host for this here franchise, Carmelita Valdez McKoy. Say hi to the people.
Hi, friend.
Would you like to tell everyone where they can find you before we get rolling here on Phantasm 2?
Sure. Folks can find me on Twitter, if it hasn't imploded yet. At the time
we're going to put that disclaimer on everything.
Fingers crossed.
We're recording in the distant past where Twitter's still on its last leg.
I have a feeling it's going to limp along and survive, but, you know, who knows? So, yes, I'm on Twitter. I'm on Letterboxd. Same handle for both, at Carmelita Says.
That's right. And if you guys would be so kind, if you want every movie, all 31 movies this month, you got to go to patreon.com/filmalchemistpod. Beyond the October stuff, we have a huge Patreon exclusive library over there. Mini-series, commentaries, all kinds of stuff. We're working really hard to make that fun for you. So if you'd be so kind, patreon.com/filmalchemistpod.
You want every movie, folks.
You want every goddamn movie.
You do. Sure. I promise you.
And you actually get a vote on the movies. So our patrons picked the 2 movies this month that will be our exclusives. But here we are. We find ourselves at Phantasm 2. This is the bigger, shinier, prettier Phantasm, right? Mike got a massive glow up. Mike is way hotter in this movie than he was in the last one. Everything's looking shiny, bigger, new. We start the tradition that I love in Phantasm of starting exactly where the last movie left off and replaying chunks of the last movie. But I thought it was funny because we were reading before the show started. I was just looking up the IMDb trivia for this movie, and it actually had me fucking cracking up. So we're going to read some of those off to get us into Phantasm 2 headspace. Number 1, this was the lowest budgeted film Universal produced in the 80s. Love that. The film's $3 million budget was 10 times larger than that of Phantasm 1979 and the biggest one in the entire series. That makes sense. I won't read you the whole thing, but there's a long bit of trivia here about the scene where they fucking blow up Reggie's house and how essentially a man responded, "This is for Phantasm? Blow the hell out of it," and let them explode a movie off the California 105 while it was under construction. Neither here nor there. Here's the one that had me dying, because they clearly wanted Mike to be a sexually worthy Mike in this movie. Fucking Brad Pitt auditioned for the role of Mike in this movie, which I find fucking hilarious.
I love this alternate universe where Brad Pitt was in this.
I love all of the hot guys that become A-list actors and seeing their start in horror movies.
Yeah.
Love that. That's something I'll never get sick of. But here we go. Brad Pitt auditioned for Mike. And Reggie Bannister did all of his own stunt work for the film, except the scene where he had to jump over the chainsaw, which they wouldn't let him do. So he would have done it, but they said no. And honestly, when I saw that scene, I was like, yeah, that made my body hurt. Like, that's how you blow an ACL. You do something really bad to yourself.
Yeah, scary.
Because I'm getting old. All right, so this movie comes out in 1988. Right? So we have a long window here since Phantasm 1. So what we start, just to start the movie, is that the last movie was a dream. We start in this amazing opening where, well, actually, before we even get to the It's a Dream stuff, we have another Phantasm amazing opening scene, which is the assault on Reggie's estate by the minions. So Carmelita, walk me through. There's a lot of moving parts in this opening scene. They said it's been about 9 years, and we're coming out fucking guns blazing.
Yeah, well, and this is kind of a cool thing that it's like the sequel is happening kind of in real time. Mm-hmm. Because 79 to 88,
enough time for Mike's glow up.
Absolutely, and Reggie looks 9 years older, so it all tracks, right?
He's graying, yeah.
He's graying. and he looks like one of those guys that like he's stuck in the 70s, like that was his prime, and he's hanging on for dear life.
I hope I was like, do people see us and they're like, they're stuck in the 90s? Like that was when it was great for them. I don't know if we were distinctive as the 70s, but
it's pretty distinctive. If you go to like a shopping center now and you see very clearly 90s inspired clothing, and I'm just like, oh, we wore that, and I wish I wanted better for the youth that came after us to not
we
have
suffered
to go
so
there.
That you shouldn't have.
Right. We didn't know
with
any
our
better.
Jean Co's, our Doc Martens. My favorite was the wearing a long sleeve white shirt, like even almost a white thermal shirt under a t-shirt.
Sure. Yeah.
No matter how hot it was.
Didn't matter.
We did that for you guys and you didn't appreciate it.
You didn't appreciate it. So in this opening, I love this. We get, well, it's kind of cool. It's kind of cool how we're introduced to this girl, Liz, who has a psychic connection to Michael.
Yes,
and
for
through
some
her,
reason,
we start to get this recap.
Yes, the tall man has a group of kids who are psychically connected to him that he's luring to him.
Yeah.
Again, reinforcing in a different way that he's the lonely guy who's looking for some connection. This time he's not banging drunken fools at a bar, but luring children to him, which
luring
might be
children. Not
as empathetic as the last movie.
Right. And so we kind of get the recap where we get the introduction of how these recaps show us what we've already seen, but then it starts to recontextualize as we get more details. Mm-hmm. And so that's really cool. But then we see that Mike is in this mental hospital because if you go on and on about these deadly spheres and interdimensional slavery and a man, this tall man who can't die and
turns into a woman and bangs your brother.
Right. Like they say, okay, 5150 this kid. Like
it's not hard to imagine if you were just recapping the plot of Phantasm and said that really happened, that people would think you were off your nut.
That this
guy might need some alone time before he starts wearing us as skin suits. Yeah. Something's off.
And Mike is connecting with this girl while psychically or whatever, and through dreams, and then he gets out. Reggie comes to pick him up. Again, Reggie, true blue friend.
So we missed something big though.
What?
Because so what got Mike incarcerated, right, is the film starts with this assault on Reggie's house. Reggie's picking his guitar exactly where we left off at the end of last movie.
You're right. Yes.
He hears Mike scream. The first thing we see is Reggie runs up the stairs, peeks his head in the room, and they see, like, very graphically dragging Mike's unconscious body across the floor in the broken glass. Yeah. And this is our first taste of man of action, Reggie.
Yeah.
So he hops in, he runs downstairs, he's looking for shells, little minion jumps out of the cabinet, right? Fight. Now there's a fucking ton of them. So Reggie puts out the pilot lights on his gas stove so the fireplace will blow his house up. Army man's up a lazy Susan. Baseball bats this fucking thing down the stairs. He jukes the tall man. And then him and Mike dive out the window in one of the most memorable shots, because the way the stunt person for Mike is coming down, you're like, that dude's paralyzed or dead. Like, he's like vertical.
There's no way.
Like, Jesus Christ. Like, one of the scariest things in the movie is watching how not tuck and roll that stuntman looked.
Yes.
Hopefully he's all right, because that's not on the trivia. But it's kind of this taste of what the franchise wants to be now.
Yeah.
Because we mix that with Reggie telling him that didn't happen. Right? And he's telling the doctor, like, yeah, I know, it was I was in a stressful time, I invented it. He's like, yeah, right, just tell him what he wants to know so I can get out of here. In his inner monologue.
Yeah.
And then he goes straight from the hospital to dig up corpses. And Reggie's like, no, man, it didn't happen. He's like, oh, damn it, stop it. We know what happened. You're going to go, like, knock it the fuck up. Right?
Yes.
And so it's kind of an amazing resetting. Here's what we want Phantasm to be. but we can't admit it. Like, stop. Like, Reggie just tell him, like, dude, shut the fuck up. I got a good thing going. I got a wife and a kid. Like, knock it the fuck off. You blew up my last house. Be cool. I love where this movie starts. I think it's one of the best things. The Phantasm franchise always comes out of the gate hot. And I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, and, I think there have been other films, and I can't think of something specific off the top of my head, but when you get like a sequel and it'll like do a recap of the first movie and you're like, okay, whatever. Can we just move it along?
I usually hate it. I'm with you on that.
Right. But not in the Phantasm franchise.
Phantasm. Yeah.
It's used effectively. Mm-hmm. It's used to great effect.
Well, I think the other one too, this one, it had been 9 years. Yeah. And Phantasm 1 was a low budget cult classic. So in this one, I think there is a good chance that a lot of people would have forgotten or not known. This wasn't in the streaming, everything's available era. A lot of people probably went to see Phantasm 2 without renting Phantasm 1 or having even seen it.
Yeah.
So in this one, I think it serves a function, and then it just kind of sets a trope for the rest of the franchise, which I'm okay with, man. And then by the time we get the Reggie's like, hey, man, I still want to be cool, but fuck off. He's kind of talking him through like, it'll be all right. This fucking terrible event happened, but that dude moved on. The tall man's not here now. It's fine. When Reggie's house fucking blows up, it's a brutal gut punch. I mean, all of this happens within, 5 minutes of the start of the movie? Yeah. You get an action scene, a lie to your therapist, digging up graves, Reggie's daughter, wife, and aunt, all fucking blown to smithereens immediately.
Perish in a fiery inferno.
Like, hard fucking core, man. It's a brutal start to this movie. So they're letting us know, they're like, even though it's a little glitzier and glammier looking, we are still going the hardest. Like, we're still fucking going hard.
Yes. And it's now, we're locking Reggie in.
Yeah.
Because Reggie, the life that he had built for himself in the years since what happened in the first movie, like, now he's got, it's all gone. Literally went up in flames. And Reggie's ready to commit.
Because Mike is hearing voices, right? Welcome home, boy. You played a good game. He hears it and is like, we got to get home quick. Mike is hearing these things. Reggie doesn't hear shit.
No.
So Reggie has to take, it's kind of an interesting play on the first movie, is he has to take Mike at his word, who the state incarcerated for making up this fantasy. And there are times in the movie where Reggie starts waning. Yeah. Right? Like, kind of hinting that he thinks Mike's full of shit. But we get this kind of Sarah Connor voiceover. Right? Like a Terminator 2 like set of voiceovers.
Totally.
Like, it's all like, he signed, we got things to do. I'm enlisted for the duration now.
We got on the road.
Yeah, right? And they're like, let's go. We're montaging, but they're not stealing. They put the money in the thing. So we're setting up just this is the franchise now. We no longer are locked in at houses. This is not a normal suburban life attacked anymore. This is not a dream anymore. This is us fucking going to kill a monster. Every single movie is the classic hero's tale of we're going to go find a monster and try to kill it.
Yeah.
And I think this section of the movie's hyper effective. The voiceover writing is a big step up from the last movie, right? They had this line in there I loved. Because I'm from a really small town, right? Small towns are like people. Some grow old and die. Some get murdered.
Yeah.
Right? And so while they're doing this like necessary setting us up for the new world of the franchise, I thought the voiceovers were great. The driving into a fucking like derelict city. The set of the first mausoleum they enter, where they had all those graves and Reggie and Mike are like catwalking through them. And the mausoleum itself looks awesome. And then we get some effects. I think this one really put to work all the things that made the first one great, but it's just so much bigger.
It is. And I think too, one of the cool things, this franchise, maybe more than a lot of the others, and we're just, this is just the second movie, so we're just starting to get a hint of this, that this really, like, one film builds to the next, and it's building off of what came before, but it's adding, in this case, it's making it bigger, but we're drawing on that dream thing with this psychic connection, with the tall man communicating with Michael.
He like has an extra like yearning for Mike for some reason we don't know.
It's like we're going from that ending of the first film, which anyone who listened to the last episode knows we thought was a little hinky, but we're building off of that.
Mm-hmm.
Take that thing that seemed a little shoehorned and use it. Use it to build on the mythology.
Absolutely.
That's going to become the franchise.
Yeah, and by the time we're back in Mausoleum, we feel comfortable. Weird as that is to say. When we see the naked dead surgery victim on the table, we're like, oh yeah, we're in Phantasm. And then we see Liz, hunchback Liz, in the basement. And when they lift the robe and her spine rips out, and it's the head of the Slender, or not the Slender Man, the tall man, kind of almost doing a Freddy Krueger gag. Like you could tell that there had been multiple Freddy Krueger movies between these.
Absolutely.
Some of his dream escapades start taking this. I think they probably had to answer the question, how does the tall man fit into this landscape of horror? And I'm sure they said he's not a Jason Michael Leatherface. He's much more of a Freddy Krueger. I would be shocked if that comparison was not made at some point.
It had to have been.
Because that is a straight Nightmare on Elm Street gag in the middle of Phantasm. But we don't care. It's just cool, right? Where it's just, he sets traps for us. So now we're like, ooh. Every time they go anywhere, we're like, yeah, fuck yeah. Because unlike this, the first movie is the tall man is just doing his thing. He's just getting paid and getting laid. And this family is like spying on him, right? They're intruding on his shit. And as we learn, may have fucked the whole world because now they've sent him on a traveling roadshow.
Mm-hmm.
He's just decimating Oregon towns all over the place. Because he'd been in their town for like 100 years and everything was fine. But now they put him into overdrive. Yeah. So their fault for starting the apocalypse. But this one is really this like hunt for... There's this kind of cool... And this is one of those like film nerd things I think we do is we assign a lot of meaning to things afterwards.
Sure.
But I think there's a real... When you struggle with grief and loss like this family obviously has, you want there to be cosmic justice. And so in a way, this is that movie where it's these guys just fucking fighting against nature itself. Like, how fucking dare the world be such a cruel place? We're going to go, we don't know how they make money. We don't know what they do. They obviously have a bunch of money, right? I don't know if that life insurance and house insurance check came in and they're just living off that.
Right.
But they're just these, like, they even pay when they steal the stuff. We think they're stealing it. They pay. They are noble knights questing to fucking defeat dark forces in the world that cause us undue pain that should not exist. This family should not have gone through that. And I think there's kind of this cool Arthurian thing to that, right? Where it's not something you expect in your Phantasm, but it's not bad.
No, it's not bad.
You know what I mean? I thought it was kind of a cool new headspace to get in. Instead of this mismatch of dream psychedelic horror imagery, we've really made Reggie and Mike these fucking avenging knights. I fucking love that.
They're on a quest.
Movie. They're on a fucking quest. Do they pick up a woman so that Reggie can just immediately start sexually assaulting her? Yes.
Okay.
He's actually not assaulting this one. He's sexually pestering her.
Yeah. Well,
part 3 is where he like really takes the turn.
He really takes a turn. So again, these characters are kind of your average Joe.
Yeah.
Kind of guys.
Yeah.
And we slowly are picking up the little nuances of their personality. Mm-hmm. And when Reggie picks up alchemy.
Alchemy.
Chemi for short.
That is one of those dumb writing things where I was like, she has to be like a tall man bomb. Because he saw her dead with her tits out. Right. And now she's immediately just wanting to fuck Reggie. Like the moment they get into this like ghostly house and they're setting up their booby trap, she's like, want to bang? It's like, what?
I'm gonna read you
her
an exact
sexual
quote from my
hotness
notes.
to fucking Reggie's is so lopsided.
I wrote in my notes, and
Yeah.
I quote, "The Reggie alchemy sex scene is its own kind of horror."
Okay, there's a lot to unpack here. We got to take this beat by beat, because my favorite thing was my son said the reason he liked this movie better was that Mike looked like he could play football in this movie. And I was like, I don't know what that means. You just like a fucking square jaw, like a good-looking guy. Fine. I was like, all right, he looks more like a guy who could bang a random lady he picks up who is a young, attractive hippie, Oregon hippie, right? Her just dry humping the shit out of Reggie, and then a grenade goes off in the kitchen that is
who's
so
old enough to be
casual.
her dad.
Oh, by far. And he just is like, a grenade went off. Let me run down there casual. Doesn't even have to put clothes on because they're both still wearing clothes. That zipper is just chewing into Reggie like an orb from another planet.
And Alchemy is making all these weird whooping noises
and
like, and she's like moving in this really unnatural way. It was kind of like Showgirls. It was kind of like the pool sex scene in Showgirls
mixed with that cowboy movie my mom used to love, 8 Seconds.
Oh, yes.
If a showgirl had to ride a bull for 8 seconds, that's exactly what this scene is.
That's what this was. Yeah, that sex scene is.
But I think it's careful what you wish for.
It's the weirdest thing in the whole franchise so far.
It is the weirdest thing. It's weirder than the tall man being so empty that he's trying to feel love. Right? That's a very Frankenstein kind of a vibe, right?
Yeah. Makes so much more sense.
We take this. I love Reggie Bannister, but he is not like a fucking WAP generator, right? And he immediately gets what he wants, and the whole scene is him going, ugh. It's like, who is this for? I was like, is this Coscarelli telling us like horny whore boys? Teenage boys so like, hey man, do you really think this is how it happens? No! If Alchemy gets in that car and immediately wants to bang Reggie, that's a red flag.
That's a red fucking
flag. Something's wrong. Right? You have to know where your sexual slinging level is. And if magically, this is something, I told some kids in my neighborhood this weirdly today. And it made me sound really like an old man, which I didn't like. But they were talking about how everything they get is free, so they don't ever have to spend money. I was like, someone's spending money. And I told them, I said, I took a class in college at economics, right? And the first thing you learn, there's no free lunch. And it made me, I'm like, oh my God, am I like an old dad now? Like, I don't know anything about money or finances. I'm not that kind of a dad. But I just had this, like, I slipped into it for a moment. I was like, fuck. But then I was watching Phantasm 2, and I was like, but that's true about dick, too. That's true about dick and pussy, right? If you are all of a sudden somewhere and someone's so much fucking higher on the scale than you, and I know people are going to be
at you?
Yeah, people are going to be mad at me for saying this, and I know everyone should be body positive, and I hope everyone is. I hope everyone's happy in their skin. But if I'm sitting there and Monica Bellucci comes down and she's like, hey, guy who's significantly overweight, normally has a mustache, is 40 with a bad back and knees, right? Who's not a millionaire, right? Wearing cargo shorts and flip-flops at the bar. I want to fuck your brains out. I would say yes, but in the back of my head, I would be preparing to die.
You're suspicious.
You're suspicious. We have our levels.
Question everything.
We have our levels in this game, right? I used to be best friends with this male model in LA, right? Lovely guy. He was a bartender. I was a bouncer. And then his modeling career took off. Just a fucking gloriously handsome man. And so we'd go to bars and like we'd just be able to walk into bars. Like I didn't have to wait in lines and shit. Like LA clubs.
Sure.
And I was like, what's happening? Like, do we know someone? He's like, no. And like I was like his fat big friend to like keep it cool. Right? So like he didn't get beat up. But dude, we were sitting there one night and someone just sent drinks over to us. And I was like, what's happening? And the bartender's like, oh yeah, that those group of girls bought you guys drinks. And I was like, what? I was like, do we know them? And he's like, no. And I was like, this has literally never happened to me. I was like, no girl's ever bought a drink for me. And then in my mind, I'm like, they're not buying it for you now, stupid. They're buying it. But we would just go places and women would just buy us drinks because he was so fucking beautiful. And he was so beautiful that he was so uninterested in it. Right? Like, there's a weird thing about people that can just fuck anyone they want at any time that you kind of start to understand how it works at that high level of the game where they're just like, it's not exciting to just have a one-night stand because they could fuck in a Walmart bathroom.
Yeah.
So it was a whole like behind. I mean, I felt like Mike and Reggie in the world of the tall man. I was in the science fiction realm, but it taught me, like, is those kind of women are just coming up and like immediately with no questions asked, throwing it.
And you've never
off.
had this experience before in your life.
Oh, me?
And no, I'm just saying like for Reggie.
Yes.
I'm guessing this doesn't usually happen to you, Reggie.
No.
So you would think like
no one is fucking running and jumping over bushes and shrubs to fuck the ice cream man.
With the corduroy boogie down cap?
Yeah, with the fucking bald spot and the mini ponytail. Who's probably on everyone's like, hey, don't let your kids buy ice cream from him.
Right.
We learned that Reggie's a noble hero, but as a parent, that'd be a red flag. Like, there are nights when maybe you just... one night I'll never forget, I did a New Year's Eve party with this exact guy, and we rode in a limo with these Russian models who I'm pretty sure were over here for, like, some illegal shit. Right? It seemed like maybe this was like a prostitution ring we'd stumbled on. That's a whole other story for another day.
Right.
That I don't need to share here. But we got invited to the Maxim New Year's Eve party. And they held it in the Chinese Theater down in Hollywood. And I swear to God, that night was the most desirable I'd ever been to attractive women ever, because I looked like I didn't belong. They looked at me and they're like, why is that guy here? And I think in their minds, they're like, if he's here, there must be some really good reason for it.
There's something going on.
Exactly. There literally wasn't. My best friend was just like, hey, I'd rather hang out and drink with you than my girlfriend. And I was like, oh, that's nice. And so I was being like swarmed at times because they must have thought I owned Maxim. They must have thought I was like a trust fund baby. And so like for a night I experienced it. And I was like, the moment they learn this ruse, it all crumbles and collapses. Right? But even in that moment where I had slid through the system, I knew there's no free pussy. There's no free dick. Right? Like there are consequences to your actions. And that's kind of, I don't know by the end of the film what Kimmy is. Like, is alchemy good and then the tall man mind controls her? Was she a form of the tall man? Like, what the fuck is going on with her?
I think
because Mike sees her as a dead body at the start.
Yes.
I never figured out what her deal was.
And I don't think we do in this film. But I think we'll get some answers in the third film. Just like the it's a dream thing at the beginning of the first film didn't make a lot of sense. And then this film expounds on that and makes it fit a little better.
Yeah.
But yes, no, you're right. It's like, okay, well, is she the tall man? She's not the tall man.
I didn't think so because she pulls her like head down.
Right. She starts peeling her scalp off.
It's ironic because Reggie has the dream to Mike that he's like, I'm still not sure she isn't just a wet dream of yours. Like, not realizing the irony that, like, 10 minutes later, that he thinks Alchemy's a real person that wants to fuck him.
Right.
But it's bizarre.
It is bizarre.
The alchemy is the weirdest thing in this movie.
So weird.
By, like, miles. Because essentially they stop to pee together, and he's just like, hey, man, I don't know. Like, she could die if she hangs out with us. And Reggie's like, it's cool. She's hot. And I was like, Reggie's just willing for her to get murdered and turned into an intergalactic slave on the off chance he could get some puss.
Yes, it's Reggie's justification for like, no, but we picked her up and this is my chance to get laid.
A common trope of Reggie throughout the rest of the franchise is, hey, let's put it all on hold so I can try to bang. It really is an important thing for him.
It's a thing.
Oh, shit. There's some really cool stuff that's happening besides this, too. I actually thought some of the best stuff in the movie was I am a huge fan of sweaty priests that realize they have not lived up to their cloth.
Yeah.
I fucking loved this segment of the movie. There's an old man who died. It's Liz's grandfather. This is how Liz comes into our tale, right? So Liz is starting to see hints of the tall man, right? She's in here. Grandpa's in the casket. When he's like, I can't do it today. I can't turn my cheeks any longer. And he stabs Grandpa, and the camera turns around, and Grandma passes out in the aisle. perfection. That is
Yeah,
perfection
yeah.
to me. I could watch that shit all day.
I love how we, coming into this, it's like as they're walking in to like start the funeral, it's like everyone's acting super weird.
There's like four people there. The granddaughter's like, I actually need to leave. Like she didn't know what time the funeral was.
Yeah, like everyone's being weird. There's these two Undertaker guys, like pallbearer guys that look creepy, and there's a good reason for that because they're tall man minions. And then the priest is acting super shady. Like he keeps looking over his shoulder. He's sweating. He's drinking out of a flask. And you're like, what is this guy's deal?
Yeah.
And then when he takes out this, this ceremonial dagger and stabs the corpse of Grandpa, and you're just like,
was he working with him? Like, what was his job? Is a priest supposed to be able to fight intergalactic warlords when they show up?
I don't know. And
they made it seem like he had made a shady deal with
something.
The tall man.
He must have.
Because he had the dagger,
because he presides over the funerals.
That was the blonde woman banging dagger.
Right. Yes. Same dagger.
He must have been in on it.
Yeah, maybe he had made some kind of deal, some kind of Faustian
I'm
bargain.
remiss that I can't remember who that actor was, but fucking crushed this role. Like, fucking crushed it, right? Like, he's an amazing sweaty priest.
Kenneth Tigger. Tigar.
Okay.
No,
it's actually one of my cinematic catnips. I love sweaty priests that, like, have tons of regret and remorse.
Yeah.
Love
this guy has it.
Oh, he's great.
I love the image of him being hung by a rosary.
His own rosary? Yeah.
Is very cool.
Oh, dude, how about because in this one we start to do another trope that I love of the franchise where the orbs start getting new powers.
Yeah.
Right? So we see someone open a box. They're like, hey, what's in here? And then the side of it opens and 3 orbs come out. Now the orbs have this like cowboy boot spur, and it fucking sliced his ear off, and it's fucking glorious. It's so awesome. I love the new powers when they add them of this. But yeah, I just kind of love him having, because he has this thing later in the movie where he's at his house and he's like, oh man, it's got to be just trees. It's just trees. Like, what could be happening? And then the tall man's just like in the window, like, wow. And he's just fucking pounding Jack Daniels shots. I just love this guy.
He's fun. And this film is moving in a more comedic direction.
Yes.
But it's not too over the top. It walks this fine line. Mm-hmm. There's definitely more comedy elements than in the first film.
It's kind of interesting because we've had a huge decade-long explosion of horror by the time this happens.
Yes.
Because at one point we see the ashes, and it's the ashes of Mr. Sam Raimi.
Yeah.
Right? That's what's written on the box.
I love that.
And you can see Evil Dead written all over this movie.
Yes. For sure.
I mean, Reggie is now Ash. It's tongue-in-cheek, but it still is gnarly when it has to be gnarly. I think it's a great point you're bringing up. But I think that's the other thing, too, is seeing Phantasm. Like what if they had made a sequel in, like, 81? It's interesting to see the sequel after this huge explosion of successful horror franchises and how that had to affect the making of Phantasm.
Absolutely. I think you're absolutely right. Yeah, it would be a very different sequel if it had been made in the early 80s as opposed to the late 80s.
Yeah, it's so interesting, man. But yeah, because it is kind of, you see, but that's the thing, even with all the influences starting to come in, it's still really, it's the thing I've always appreciated about the franchise so much is how it just carved this niche for itself. It's really not like any other franchise. Like, you can't really find one and you're like, oh, Phantasm's like that. They're not interchangeable. It's such a unique set of films. I was like, even, like, is Wishmaster kind of like this? Maybe. Wishmaster sinks faster. It's not as unique as this. Yeah. Like, the Leprechaun franchise is kind of like one of the, like, Leprechaun really did something, like, incredible, which is it just kept making the, like, B-est of B movies.
Yeah.
And still finding a way to be shockingly entertaining and interesting for a point, right?
Yeah.
Like, further than Phantasm made it. Yeah, for what it is. They made, fucking 10 of those fucking movies? I would say at least the first 6 all have my attention. I don't know. But I like the singularity of this. And then we start getting into the Now we're doing the Phantasm bits, right?
Yeah.
Now we have because now we introduce new characters, which I think they refer to in the third one as gravediggers. These are zombies that he brings forth to do his dirty work, right? We see the grandmother come back as a zombie, which is fucking awesome and hilarious. One of my favorite things they add in this one, because she throws the other fucking gravedigger into the fire, which I thought was great. I love that the sphere stabs the guy's hand into the wall. The gravedigger chops his hand off. This allows them to steal the hand because it has tasted flesh.
Right.
Right? So now it's satiated, and they can use this as a key, which is a fucking awesome addition. Because this opens up our new White Room, right? What did you make of the addition to the kind of White Room in this one? I mean, Reggie's off having his chainsaw side quest, which is fucking awesome. That's a straight Evil Dead moment.
Fight!
Yeah, mine
fight!
said chainsaw measuring contest. Because he has his little chainsaw, and then the guy has the big one.
Yeah.
But even though phallically that guy's bigger, Reggie eventually puts his right on the guy's crotch and goes up,
yes.
which is awesome.
It's pretty one-sided.
Yeah, Reggie's getting his ass whipped because he's Reggie.
Reggie's
he's a
getting
normal
his ass
guy.
whipped.
He's not a giant infused gravedigger.
But he takes that opportunity.
That's right.
To deliver the master stroke. And that's all he needed to do.
That's all he had to do. That one stroke is usually going to be enough on anyone they battle.
That's enough.
But yeah, what did you make of the White Room again in this one? We see that the ball can burn through doors.
Yeah.
The ball has lasers. I love when the ball explodes a rat. So what did you make of all... They're adding a lot of new stuff into this phase. It's Phantasm again.
Yes.
Because this one feels often like a big budget remake of the last one. But I love that they're adding new stuff. That's if you're in a franchise ad, man. What did you think of the additions?
I really liked it. Like I mentioned previously, I liked that there's this building. It doesn't feel like retcon. It feels like we're learning more. More is revealed. Mm-hmm. It feels very natural to me.
Yeah.
When we got thrown in the first film, and poor Mike and Jody just like are bombarded with all these crazy things out of nowhere. And now as we're into the second film, it's like Michael's learning more. We're learning more. More is revealed. And I think it really works. And I love that it's like, okay, we get the portal room comes back. This motif is brought back, but we're learning more about it. The spheres are brought back, but now we see that there's other components that are at play here. It can be used to kill in these other ways. Right. We learning that once it's hooked into someone, it's kind of inert and you can handle it so long as it's locked into some flesh.
It's in this one, they kind of turn them simple machine.
Yeah.
The first one, they're these ominous, almost like angelic things, right? And this one, they're just like stab things and stop. It's pretty fucking awesome.
Yeah.
Because this one has
I just think it really works.
Is this where it gets stuck in the guy's face?
Yeah.
Fucking hell. The makeup on that is incredible. Where it's digging
awesome.
Up the guy's spine. He's like, oh! Right? Because it has a blender mode now.
Too.
And it hits up his back after it explodes the rat. Right? The other guy comes in. The one-handed guy's beating him up. When that thing blenders up through his body, the makeup of it stuck, not being able to come through his face.
Yeah.
That's why we watch horror movies over and over again. To see that moment.
Yes.
Fucking loved every second of it.
Yeah. When the tall man, when the little like alien tentacle thing comes out of his head, like this little like, I mean, all these little things that you're like, what is that?
Yeah, what
but
the
it
fuck?
never, yeah, but
that's the trope of Phantasm, is adding things that we go, what? And never answering them.
But
because we
not
go back into
way.
Hell World. Yeah, not in the way it's obnoxious.
No, not in the way where you're like, oh, okay, whatever. Now you guys are just adding stuff in here for no reason.
They're
it's like, no, it's
reminding
cool.
us we are yokels like Reggie who will never know the full picture.
Yeah.
Because this time they slide into the fucking Hell World. It's the same fucking walking tread of like a Led Zeppelin cover, right? They're not doing anything. They're just like walk. It's Led Zeppelin 8, I guess. And they're just kind of walking around. They bring it back in. They're fucking fighting to turn it off. There's the barrels again. It's all very similar. But now they stab him with his own orb. Awesome. Yellow blood. Tentacle comes out.
So cool.
Oh, fuck. When they stab him full of the hydrochloric acid and he starts fucking melting, right? Liz stabs him, right? They're all working together now.
Yeah. Yeah, with the trocar. That's another thing about this.
The embalming
Not to get
machine,
too sidetracked. Yeah, all the everyday horror of what happens at a mortuary.
Yes.
Mixed with the high concept horror of this realm and the,
When he's got that giant thing by her neck vein, and he's like kind of digging it in, exploratory. Again, maybe like a pause for like a sexual fantasy. He's like, I used to be that vein, and the locals were the needle. No, just kidding. But I was like, oh god, it like made my neck like, and yeah, once he's, because this is how the tall man should die. This is how you slay a monster, not drop him in a fucking hole. He's melting, and the melting effects are fucking rad.
They look good.
The thing that fucking sells it, right, is the eyes popping. So fucking righteous, right?
It's good.
So fucking good. And then again, we get into this weird tale of an ending. The ending again, I think it's just a thing where they don't always land right for me, the Phantasm movies. But again, it's all kind of shifting realities, unreliable narration, and they always know they're going to start exactly where it left off last time.
Yes.
So by this time, I'm kind of trained to not worry about it as much. But they get away in the hearse that Kimmy stole. They're like, thanks for saving us. Yeah. Check the coffin, make sure it's empty. They do, it's empty. She rolls up the window and they're all cool with that, right? Presumably so that they can bang
Reggie
in the
thinks
back.
he's going to get roadhead or something.
Even though he's the passenger.
Right. But that's the look on his face.
He's going to get
Reggie thinks he's going to get roadhead or a hand job or something while she's driving.
He's going to be doing it. He's going to be performing the head or the hand job.
Right. I mean, that would make more sense.
Right. And then Kimmy pulls her scalp down.
Yeah.
She is now somehow an agent of evil. So because the tall man, I don't really know how to explain it. Somehow between her picking them up, because I don't know if she's dead when she picks them up.
I don't know. Yeah, because
somehow
Reggie
in
had told her
and the
take
rest,
the car and go.
Yes, and we see a little bit in part 3 that kind of changes the math on this.
Yes.
Because part 3 addresses some of this, but let's just talk about part 2 for now. Somehow between picking that car up and when she pulls her head down, she is now under the influence. I don't know if that means she's dead. I don't know if this is something he's injecting into Reggie's mind, right? All of a sudden they're swerving. Reggie's outside of the car bloody. And you're like, no, not fucking Reggie. Like, now we don't want Reggie to die. We're pretty invested in Reggie, right? And we think this is his death. And Mike in the back says, it's only a dream. And the tall man goes, no, it's not. And the fucking car starts driving. And I was like, I love that because they are so addressing and fighting the probably mixed reception of the ending of the first one.
Yeah.
And I think it's a fucking badass move to play it exactly the same as the first one and then say, nope.
Yeah.
So this one works better for me.
I think so too. That aspect, for me, this second film, it although I did like the narration and I kind of like how we were setting up it, the first half of the film did feel a little slow to me.
Yeah, it's a lot of vistas driving with voiceover. And, yeah.
Once it kicks into high gear, it's like this last act, I think is great. And yes, this ending, it's a play on what we got in the first movie, but works so much better. And it's so almost like it's a nod to us. Like, I know what you thought when you finished the first film. And here's how this is how we're going out in the second film. I think it's great. It's a excellent moment for the tall man. No, it's not. It's so good.
I think it's the strongest on a filmmaking craft entry of the franchise. And again, when you have the biggest budget of the franchise, it's just going to look prettier. The acting is a big fucking improvement in this one. I like that we start to see Angus Scrimm unfolding a little more. We get to see a little more of the tall man beyond just, boy. We see him kind of more as a mastermind now. We see him as this plague going from city to city, right? So I thought they did a great job of honoring the first one, expanding. It doesn't have the same performance art vibe that the first one does. This is a real narrative journey.
Yes.
But I think it still holds true to all of the stuff we liked. I think it picks the orbs up a notch. It picks the tall man up a notch.
The effects. You definitely see the budget on the effects and how much more of the spheres we see once the spheres enter the story. Because I looked, we don't see a sphere until 50 minutes in.
Yeah, not surprising at all. Yeah, but
once we do, they kick up those effects.
Yeah, and I don't know that I would argue this is. I mean, for me personally, I probably rewatched the first one the most, but I think you can make a compelling argument. This one's better than the first one in almost every way. The difference is again, we're talking about that like what makes a movie. I don't know that this one captures that like lightning in a bottle feeling of the first one. Just the weirdness. And the second one gets the benefit of standing on the shoulders of all that. But it looks nicer. It's acted better. The effects are way better. The tall man's way better. The orbs are way better. Reggie's fucking... They spend time actually building Reggie and Mike into the characters we're going to ride this ship out with.
Sure.
And it doesn't ever drag enough to where I'm bothered by it. Right? It's just... I think it's a really important step to get to more movies. And it doesn't sacrifice
Raimi's
this
Evil
movie
Dead, right?
Yes. It's
and
Evil Dead to Evil Dead 2.
There are people that Evil Dead is still their favorite. There are people that say Evil Dead 2 is better.
I'm an Evil Dead 1 guy.
And I am too. But neither are wrong.
No, they're both fucking amazing movies.
Because there's different strengths. But there is, when you get to Evil Dead 2, you kind of streamline some of the characters to have like a real clear protagonist in Ash. There's a little more money, so there's more effects and there's more in the budget for that stuff. A little more polished. It's very similar.
Better. Yeah. I agree.
It's very similar.
There's just I always have a soft spot for really low budget, like go for it movies. And this doesn't, that's really the hair I'm splitting, because Phantasm 2 kicks Phantasm's ass up and down the block. In every metric of filmmaking, except for that unquantifiable coolness metric, whatever you would call it, that magic, right? There is an unquantifiable metric of art, and Phantasm probably wins that by a lot. But in every other quantifiable area, Phantasm 2 kicks the shit out of Phantasm 1.
You're not wrong.
And that's where you want your sequel to be. It's stepped up in every way. It's adding to the mythology while not tarnishing the first one. So I think it's a really successful. This is something we like to do when we do these franchises, right? If I ran you through, where does this rank to you versus other big franchises part 2? So let's say Child's Play 2.
I think this is better.
I like this better, right? Texas Chainsaw 2. I like this a lot better.
Yeah.
And I don't even dislike Texas Chainsaw 2. I just think this one's more effective. Scream 2.
I kind of want to say this, maybe.
Candyman 2.
I don't know. Oh.
Scream 2 is a close one. I would pick this over Scream 2.
No, I'm giving it Candyman.
Candyman 2, the New Orleans Candyman?
I kind of like that one.
I kind of like that one too. I would still have Phantasm. Let's go. Nightmare 2, I fucking love. I think Friday and Nightmare 2 are both so good.
Yeah, agreed.
So I think those two are better. I think this is better than Halloween 2.
Oh, I don't know.
Halloween 2's fun, but it feels off.
I'm one of those rare people that's like, I kind of love Halloween 2.
I love Halloween 2 also. But again, it feels like it's tugging against Halloween 1 at times.
Sure.
So that's what I'm saying. If you rank all of the big horror franchises, I think Phantasm 2 stacks right up there. It's not better than Friday 2. It's not better than Friday 2. Friday and, what did I say? Friday and Nightmare 2. Those two both have a lot going on, and we've appreciated them more as they've gotten older. Those are both great. But I think any other major franchise sequel, you can stack this right up there. That's a great testament.
No, you're not wrong.
That's a great testament. That's it for Phantasm 2. We hope you guys have enjoyed it as much as we. I love rewatching this franchise. I actually can't believe it took us this many years to get to it. But I'm glad we're here now. I'm more glad that we're joined by our friend Carmelita for this run. Thank you so much. Would you like to tell the people one more time where they can find you?
Yeah. Oh, and thank you, my friend, because I am having so much fun with this franchise. So folks can find me Twitter, Letterboxd, same handle for both. Make it easy for you at Carmelita Says.
That's right. And if you want every episode this month, all 31, you got to go to patreon.com/filmalchemistpod. Support the show over there and we'll give you goodies. Also, you'll get to join Carmelita in our patron exclusive community we have over there on Discord. So you can reach out and talk to her over there too. We work really hard on that to make it worth your guys' time. So if you could, if you're able, if you feel generous enough, patreon.com/filmalchemistpod. Get yourself every movie. We're closing in on.
Yeah, it's like when you go trick-or-treating and they give you the full candy bar.
Yeah, that's right.
The Film Alchemist Patreon is like you guys are handing out the full candy bars.
Were you more of a full candy bar kid or the dollar bill house kid? Which was more exciting?
The full candy bar was more exciting.
I honestly felt the same. So the $1, what am I doing with the dollar?
Right.
I'm just going to go buy a big candy bar somewhere.
Right.
I agree. You passed the test. Well, that's it, guys. Yeah, we are about a third of the way through our October Mega Marathon. You know the deal. 31 days, 31 pods, a podcast every single day this October if you go to patreon.com/filmalchemistpod. Carmelita will be back for 3 more Phantasm adventures with us. So we will see you guys tomorrow for Phantasm 3, Lord of the Dead? I think Lord of the Dead. Some cool, like, metal album name.
Yeah.